back to our fertility journey. Today we're going to talk about our pregnancy story.
Or labor.
Labor story.
Or actually, I guess I was never really in labor. Our delivery story.
Delivery story.
So in our last video, we introduced little Xander. He's been with us for like 2 months now. And we have kind of quite a delivery story. It's definitely not how we expected things to go down, but everyone's good and healthy now. I was getting extra monitoring because I had high blood pressure previously to getting pregnant. My blood pressure was fine during the pregnancy, but I was still getting extra monitoring starting at 32 weeks. So I was going in for a biophysical profile and a non-stress test every week. And everything was like fine on all my monitoring. During the ultrasound, he had like 4 tests he had to pass, and he would pass them all right away within the first 5 minutes. Like 3 movements and practice breathing. All that stuff was really good. And the only thing that came back a little bit weird a couple times was my amniotic fluid being kind of high. Remember, I was like really anxious about that, but that wasn't too big of a deal anyways. So we were just kind of doing that every week, or I was. And then when I was week 37, I just like really wanted Alex to come with me to this appointment. He hadn't been coming because it was time consuming and he has a job. So I was like, I really want you to come to this appointment with me. So he came, and I was 37 weeks. I had just kind of started thinking maybe I would go a little earlier just because of what my body was doing, but we went in at 37 weeks and we did the ultrasound, and the baby did pass the ultrasound test, but it took him 30 minutes as opposed to that 5 minutes that he usually just kind of passes everything through. So I kind of knew something was wrong, and I started crying because I could just feel that something was wrong. No one else really was reacting too much to it. He had done his 3 movements. It just took him a long time. And he didn't do his practice breathing, but that was okay, and everything else looked fine. So I said, well, we'll just get you going to the non-stress test. And I was so glad Alex was there to comfort me because I was like, oh, something's wrong. Like, this is, like, not the baby that I knew. And so we did the non-stress test, and that was not going super well. He wasn't responding much to his movements. His heart rate wasn't fluctuating enough where they were kind of like, oh, I don't know, you might need some further monitoring. We're not sure. They tried to call my doctor and get their opinion. So we were in there for like an hour.
Longer.
Yeah, just kind of watching the heart rate and figuring out what we were going to do next. So I was 37 weeks in one day. And then they finally talked to some doctor who just said, oh, let's get him into the hospital for some further monitoring. So we weren't too freaked out or anything. I don't remember being that freaked out. I was a little nervous.
Annoyed.
Yeah, we were annoyed. And that was election day, and I really wanted Alex to vote, and obviously that didn't end up happening, but so we went to the hospital. Actually, we stopped at home first to let out the dogs, and then I just happened to grab our hospital bag just in case we needed it, but we were thinking we're just going to get some extra monitoring and come back home. So we went to the hospital, we waited in the waiting room for a while, checked in, and then got kind of hooked up to the monitors there just to kind of see what was going on with baby. And again, his heart rate wasn't fluctuating enough. I guess they like there to be like some big spikes when he moves, and that wasn't really happening. I was also showing some contractions, so that was kind of interesting. We would see my contractions go up. Mm-hmm. And what else?
Oh, you want to talk about the fingers?
So they were kind of, while we were there, we didn't really know what was going on. There was like a little bit of like a murmur, so like, oh, maybe you'll have them today, but we weren't really sure. And I was thinking like, well, I'm going to be really uncomfortable if they just like send me home after, something's kind of going on. But we were just kind of hanging out, and they were kind of testing me to see what was going to happen or if I was ready to do a vaginal delivery and all that stuff. So because I was showing some signs of labor with the contractions and some other symptoms, they wanted to see what my cervix was doing, if it was like open. And I thought it was just kind of like right in the opening, but they like really got to get up in there to feel it. And so the first nurse did it, and she's like, oh, I can't quite get in there because I haven't had a baby before. So then she was like, let me see if I can go grab a nurse with longer fingers. So we were really like giggling about that, but they got a nurse with longer fingers in, and that whole thing was kind of painful. But one thing that was interesting is that when they were testing my cervix, then the baby kind of started responding. His heart rate started doing like what it was supposed to be doing. So that was a little bit reassuring. So it was kind of going back and forth on what we were going to do, and then I mean, it honestly is kind of like a what's the word, phase? Not phase. Blur?
Okay.
It was kind of like a blur. I don't really remember it exactly. I know they had me on oxygen at one point. I'm not sure why. Maybe to see if baby responded better to that. And no one was really too, like, anxious or, like...
Yeah, it seemed pretty calm at the hospital, but we were kind of felt like we were in an emergency situation, but they were all really calm about it, so it wasn't probably not too abnormal.
Hopefully, and, you know, that's probably, like, they're very used to it, but that was really helpful for us. I think that everyone was, like, pretty, like, chill.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like, oh, this might happen today, it might not. And then a doctor came in. My doctor wasn't available, so a different doctor came in to kind of consult with us, and she was saying, like, at this point, it would be, he's in some sort of stress, and at this point, it'd be riskier to keep him in than to take him out. You're technically term. So we were kind of like, okay, and I was a little bit emotional because this is not really what I pictured for our delivery story, or our delivery, and then, I think at, like, 12:50, it had been, like, since 8 in the morning we're getting monitoring, so this is, like, 4.5 hours later, she was like, I think we're going to be doing a C-section, so we're going to get the anesthesiologist in here. And then by 1:30, I was having him. So it was really kind of quick once they made that decision.
Really quick.
How were you feeling at that time?
I don't remember. But I remember when they actually got into the surgery, it was like 10 minutes and it was done.
Super quick. I know right before, I text a couple family members, like, I'm getting some extra monitoring done. Our tests are kind of weird. And then the next time we called them was like, oh, we have a baby. Alex had said right before the C-section, like, should I tell people? I'm like, oh, you better not, because I didn't really know, like, what we were kind of getting into, or what, if the baby was going to be okay, or what was happening. At that point, I was just kind of like, get him out. Like, let's make sure he's okay. They had talked previously about whether I could do a vaginal delivery, but they said it would probably be too stressful for the baby, and it would be too long, so they said, like, we're just going to go ahead with the C-section. So they took me to the room. There was, like, a ton of people in there, and it was all women, weirdly, but it was like 11 staff.
Mm-hmm.
And they were prepping me. I was a little bit emotional, and they were trying to play some classical music, and they were all very nice and, like, motherly towards me. And the whole time we were listening to the baby's heart rate, so I know he was doing okay. And then Alex wasn't in there for the beginning, and then I think he came in once I was, like, ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
I was, like, strapped down with my arms, like, to the side, and then a big, like, sheet in front of me so I couldn't see what was going on. And he sat right by my head the whole time. And then, so they did the C-section, and I remember the very first thing I heard once they took the baby out, I, like, felt some sensations. It was kind of weird, but it wasn't, like, painful. They took the baby out, and they showed him to me through the screen. Did you see him too?
Yeah.
They showed him to me, and then the first thing I heard anyone say was, like, he's super cute, but it's good we got him out when we did. And then they took him. And this was, like, the worst part in the world for me is I didn't know if he was okay or not. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't really hear him cry when he came out, so I was very panicked because I knew you were supposed to hear him cry. And I remember, like, obsessively asking Alex about it, and he's like, I think I heard him, I'm not sure. But all of the doctors were gathered around the baby, and I'm just sitting there strapped, and no one's kind of telling me what's going on. I don't know how it lasted. It felt like a year that I was, like, sitting there, and no one was telling me anything. I remember Alex telling me that he had peed, and everyone was kind of laughing, so I thought, okay, it's not super dire. And then the anesthesiologist behind me was the only other person that was there, and she was like, well, you're not intubating him, so, you know, it's not super serious, but I kind of knew something was going on. And then Alex went over to check, and it was basically that the baby was in a little bit of respiratory distress, so he needed some extra help breathing, so he needed oxygen. Is that correct?
I think so.
So that's what they were giving him oxygen, and he was able to regulate it pretty quickly. But I know the APGAR score? I didn't even want to know what it was for, like, the longest time, but it was very low when he first came out. So it was kind of an emergency situation, and they took him up to the NICU, and I went to the recovery room, and I think Alex went with the baby. But they were able to bring the baby around, and I got to meet him and kiss him, and then they took him up. But before they really knew what was going on, and we heard that they might have to do, like, some, like, put him in a freezer to make sure he didn't get brain damage. Like, there was some, like, severe tests they were going to have to do, they thought maybe. Mm-hmm. But our little Xander was able to kind of recuperate very quickly. So he was in the NICU for, like, the first day, and they were running tests on him, and he passed all of his tests, and he needed some help with the oxygen initially, but he was able to get off of that pretty quickly, too. So then once he passed all of his tests in the NICU, that first day, he was able to move to level 2, and I think because of the quote-unquote stressful start, he was super sleepy, so he wasn't able to, like, get through a full feeding without falling asleep. So he had to work really hard to like gain the weight and be able to eat a full meal or whatever. And so I was in the hospital for 4 days with the C-section recovery. And then Xander was in the NICU for like about 10 days. So we had some really long days in there, like 9 to 9, just being there, trying to work on breastfeeding, working on feeding, skin to skin, bonding with him. It was nice because we got to learn a bunch from the nurses.
Yeah. That was really good. Otherwise, they just send you home and you don't know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, I think if we were sent home the second day, it would have been super overwhelming because we got to do like the first bath with the nurses. You know, Alex worked on changing the diapers with the nurses. We worked on like different feeding techniques with the nurses. We were kind of stuck with like the same nurse for 12 hours. So we had a lot of really good ones and a couple ones that we didn't really vibe with. And then we would come home at night and I would just kind of pump through the night to get my milk supply up and we'd go back. But it was a little bit nice those first 2 weeks. We were able to kind of go home and sleep without the newborn because he was at the hospital. And tell him about the video camera that they had there at the NICU.
Oh, so they have these little cameras that you can log into a website and see what your baby's doing. So you could like pull it up. I mean, it's basically a baby monitor, but it's like on the website. So you can log into your personal baby's room and then you can see what the baby's up to and it's pretty cute.
They turn it off when they're doing like cares. But otherwise, you know, you can see how your baby's doing and our family had to log in so they could like check on how Xander was doing. And the only thing that was hard is that we would have it up when we came home. And, like, if we saw him crying and there was, like, nothing we could do that, like, really hurt, that was hard. I think another thing that was really hard for me was that we saw so many doctors and so many nurses kind of giving a story. And they kept saying, like, Xander had a rough start or he had such a stressful start. And that made me feel really bad. Like, I had done something wrong or, like, I had failed him because he had kind of a stressful start. So, I mean, after I heard that so many times, I think I got kind of desensitized to it and just kind of got over that. But I felt like I had done something wrong, that this had happened, but I think everything happened how it was supposed to, and I'm so thankful I had the extra monitoring because if I was home, I think I would have been like, oh, he's not moving as much, but I don't know if I would have known that something was kind of going on. What's your take?
About what?
The stressful start?
This doesn't bother me. Never bothered me.
I really, like, took it as a personal insult every time someone said that, but I did get kind of over it. And now we go to the doctor. I'm like, yeah, he had kind of a stressful start because it's an easy way to kind of say what was going on or explain things. But one thing that we didn't really have a choice in the matter is because he was in the hospital. They did start him on a bottle right away, and they also started him with a pacifier right away. So that really wasn't our choice. They just had that going. So I know some people struggle getting their babies on a pacifier. He's been really like used to that since the beginning. So that's been nice. And then we have had kind of a struggle with the breastfeeding. They did end up kind of saying in the hospital, like, you can work on the breastfeeding, but to get out, he's going to have to, you know, be taking the bottle because you can monitor how much he's getting. And he was much more effective at the bottle. And we really wanted to get out of there. By the 10th day, we're like, oh my God. There was so much beeping constantly. And we were stuck in this little room, you know, for 12 hours a day. The nurses would need to know if something was happening with another baby. So on Xander's screen, if another baby was showing some sort of signs of distress in the NICU, alarms would go off. So we were just constantly hearing that every day, all day.
I started hearing it all the time, even when I wasn't there.
Yeah, I did too.
I like would hear it in traffic, and I'm like, I would hear the same alarm going off all the time.
Yeah, it was a lot. So we just really wanted to get out of there. But in order to get out of there, Xander had to, like, eat a certain amount. I'm trying to even remember. Well, his goals were, like, to eat a certain amount.
Yep. He had to eat a certain amount a day.
On his own, like, without being woken up sometimes. Like, they had, like, a couple things they really wanted him to prove before he got sent home. So once they had that goal in motion, it took him a couple days. So those were some really long days there. But it was nice. And then also, we also got a lot of equipment from the hospital that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Pumping stuff, bath stuff, pacifiers. We took some cloth diapers on the DL.
Should have taken more of those.
Right.
That's a tip. If you're ever in the hospital, take those cloth diapers. They don't care.
Yeah,
just
they
take
don't
like
care.
a whole bag of them.
Also, the little bottles. We took a ton of little bottles. They gave them to us. Actually, they dispose them after like one use.
Yeah, I mean the hospitals waste so much plastic. You think straws are bad?
Right.
You should see how much stuff they throw away at the hospital for no reason at all. Totally reusable stuff, but they just open new ones all the time. Little bottles for milk, little syringes that you could definitely use over and over again, but they just throw them all away.
Right.
They go through like me and you together went through like hundreds of bottles. Mm-hmm. And that's just what they do. They just throw them right away, and they don't even recycle. They don't even recycle it. It goes right in the trash.
Yeah, it's a really weird system. I don't get it.
It's bad. It's wasteful.
So then we came home after about 2 weeks. Alex had 4 weeks off, thank God. So the first 2 weeks were spent in the NICU, and then the other 2 weeks were spent at home. And we were just kind of both doing care. It was nice to have him because I was working on breastfeeding initially, but then I still would have to pump, and so Alex could feed him while I was pumping. So that was nice. And then during the night, we would just kind of switch off every 3 hours is how we did it initially. So that was good. And then Alex went back to work now, so I have more of the bulk of the night now. I would say Xander's a pretty good sleeper. He's 2 months and he goes about 2.5 hours or 2 hours a time. It'd be nice if he went a little bit longer. But he's pretty motivated to get back to sleep, so that's good. I think at this point still he's not eating a huge amount in one sitting. He kind of has like a pretty good amount and then gets a little sleepy and then has a little bit more. So I would like him to get to eat like a bigger amount and then sleep for longer, but hopefully that happens sometime. What else do you want to tell him about Xander?
That's it. It's good.
Is it good? Did I leave anything out?
I don't think so.
Delivery, C-section, NICU, C-section stuff. Anything that surprised you about a C-section?
How fast it was really impressive. I thought it was going to take a long time, but it was like 5 minutes and it was done. That was cool.
Yeah, and I really didn't feel much. The recovery was pretty difficult, and I got the clearance to exercise and stuff now, and I cannot get up in a plank for the life of me, which surprised me. It's still so weak in my stomach. It really kind of messed me up. So the recovery was bad, and I wasn't swollen at all during my pregnancy. And then afterwards, they pumped you, with fluid. My feet and my legs were, puffy for the first time. It was after I had the baby. Oh, his weight. Do you want to say how much he weighed?
5.
Nope.
Then I don't.
When he was born, he weighed 6 pounds, 13 ounces.
Okay.
It was 20 inches, which is, honestly pretty healthy for a 37-week-old, so I kind of feel proud of myself for that.
He was a chunkin'.
Yeah, he has these big cheeks. We saw even in the ultrasounds he had these big cheeks, but he weighed a good amount when he was born, so it was good. And so he dropped a little bit when he was in the hospital, and then that was another thing that one of his goals was to get back up to his birth weight, I think, before he was able to go home. And then we did have to do a little bit of extra doctor appointments since being home to make sure that he was still gaining, and he has been. So then now the next appointment we have is this 2-month in a couple days to get his shots and make sure he's developing fine. So I think at this point he's doubled his weight. He's got to be 11 or 12 pounds now, but we'll see on Tuesday. What would you say Xander's like? How would you describe him?
He's pretty chill. He doesn't cry too much, but sometimes he acts like a little prince. And he needs everything to go perfect, or else he screams his little head off. But
sometimes he acts very entitled.
Very entitled little baby.
Right, but maybe that's just how all babies are. I don't know.
All babies are entitled.
But he's not super fussy or anything. But once in a while he'll get upset and he'll just kind of stay upset for a while. So we found that bouncing on the ball is kind of really what solves a lot of the problems.
Bouncing on the ball is good. That's a tip too. Get one of those exercise yoga balls, and babies like to bounce on it. Well, some babies.
And then I had been trying to breastfeed and still pumping. So far he's had exclusively my breast milk, which I'm really proud about, even though it's only 2 months. It was it's been a lot of work. But then Alex has gotten back to work, and so I was trying to do some breastfeeding so he would still learn and not lose that skill. But then I would still have to pump, and I still have to feed him, so it was just too much. So then I've just kind of stuck to pumping and feeding him. But I'm not able to pump as much with Alex back at work and trying to take care of him, so we might start supplementing with formula. So maybe I'll do a video about that and supplementing with a vegan formula. That might be good. But we're all here. We all made it. Alex was really the best. He's been such a good dad. I knew he was going to be. He's so comfortable with the baby now. I think initially, especially with being in the NICU and Xander being so vulnerable, it was a little bit nerve-wracking. But he spent so much time with him now, obviously. He's super comfortable with the baby. And anything you want to say about that?
It's I think a lot of guys, who I know that are afraid of holding babies, I was as well, they're just not as fragile as you think. And that's what people tell me, but you don't really know until you have one. But it's just not that big of a deal to move them around and pick them up and hold them. They're fine.
Yeah, they're fine.
Once you learn that, they're pretty durable, then it's okay. You know what's weird is like I could pick up like a little dog or cat, and that's totally fine. But a baby like freaks me out.
That's what I said when he was nervous about it, because he's like, I'm so nervous I'm gonna drop it. I'm like, would you be nervous about dropping a puppy? He's like, no. Like, well, there you go.
Right. So it translates pretty good.
So he's been so good, and I've had some extra help with like my mom coming a couple days a week and stuff, because those days are long being home with a newborn by yourself. Those are some long days, but I've been able to get some extra help, and he's already almost 9 weeks. So yeah, that's what's been going on with us. That's kind of how everything went down. And like I said, I think things kind of worked out how they were supposed to. I happened to get the extra monitoring. Alex happened to go with me to that appointment. You know, we happened to have the right hospital that was connected to the children's hospital. Everything worked out pretty well. But it's a little bit like nerve-wracking to think like what would have happened if all that stuff didn't fall into place. But luckily it did. And we have a beautiful little baby. So I was thinking that maybe in the video I'll like put up some pictures as we're talking about things. Like him being born and stuff.
Good idea.
So he had a lot of extra stuff when he was born, and then as he kept passing his tests, they took off this tube or they took out that, and it just some respiratory distress at the beginning, and then kind of being able to be able to eat on his own after that.
Ready to wrap it up?
Yeah.
Thanks for watching our fertility journey. Tune in again for when we talk about formula.